My father-in-law showed up drunk at midnight and whispered, "You should have been mine, not my son's," while my husband was away on business. I stood in the doorway of my Nashville home, the security camera recording everything, and watched Gerald Dalton, pillar of the community, successful real estate developer, my husband's father, sway on my front porch with bourbon on his breath and obsession in his eyes. "Gerald, you need to leave," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. "Just let me talk to you, Mara. Please." I've waited so long to tell you how I feel. Before we go any further, if you're finding this story compelling, please hit that like button, leave a comment about where you're watching from, and subscribe with notifications turned on. Your support helps me continue sharing these stories. My name is Mara Dalton, and I'm 29 years old. I'm a music producer in Nashville, working with independent artists and occasionally landing projects with bigger labels. I met my husband, Wyatt Dalton, 3 years ago at a songwriters showcase. He was there scouting for his family's real estate company. They were developing a new entertainment district downtown, and I was producing for one of the performers. Wyatt was charming, successful, grounded in a way that felt rare in Nashville's music scene. We dated for a year before he proposed, got married in a beautiful ceremony at his parents' estate, and bought a house in East Nashville that we were slowly renovating together. His family seemed perfect at first. Gerald Dalton was a self-made millionaire who'd built Dalton Properties from nothing into one of Nashville's most successful development firms. His wife, Patricia, was elegant and involved in every charity in Davidson County. They'd raised Wyatt to be ambitious, ethical, and family-oriented. I'd thought I was lucky to marry into such a solid, successful family. I'd been so fucking wrong. The first sign came at our wedding. Gerald had given a toast that went on too long, his hand on my shoulder lingering inappropriately as he spoke about how beautiful I looked, how lucky his son was, how if he were 30 years younger. Everyone had laughed. It was a joke. Just a father-in-law being affectionate at his son's wedding. Except his hand had moved to my lower back as he'd said it, his thumb brushing against bare skin in a way that made me uncomfortable. When I'd shifted away, he'd squeezed my waist before letting go. Wyatt hadn't noticed. He'd been talking to his groomsmen, celebrating, trusting his father completely. After the wedding, there were other moments. Small things that I'd tried to dismiss. Gerald insisting on dancing with me at every family event, holding me closer than appropriate, his hand drifting lower on my back than necessary. Comments about how I looked, always phrased as compliments, but with an undertone that made my skin crawl. "That dress really shows off your figure, Mara. Wyatt's a lucky man. You're even more beautiful than when you got married." Text messages that came late at night, always when Wyatt was traveling for work. "Just checking on you. Make sure you're safe. Call if you need anything." With too many emojis, too familiar in tone. Showing up at my studio unannounced, claiming he was just in the neighborhood, even though Dalton Properties offices were across town. I told myself I was overreacting. Gerald was just an affectionate father-in-law. Some families were more physically demonstrative than mine had been. The texts were him being protective. The studio visits were coincidental. But tonight had shattered that delusion. Wyatt was in Atlanta for a week, overseeing a property acquisition for his father's company. I'd been working late at the studio, came home around 11, and was getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. I'd checked the security camera. We had them installed after a break-in scare in our neighborhood, and seen Gerald standing on the porch, visibly drunk, looking agitated. My first thought was that something was wrong, that Patricia was hurt, or there was a family emergency. I'd open the door. "Gerald? What's wrong? Is everything okay?" He'd stepped closer, too close, invading my space. I'd smelled the bourbon immediately. He reeked of it. "Everything's perfect now that I'm here with you," he'd said, his words slurring slightly. "I've been waiting for Wyatt to leave town. Needed to talk to you alone. Without him watching." "Gerald, you're drunk. You should go home to Patricia. Patricia doesn't understand me. She never has. But you." He'd reached out, trying to touch my face. I jerked back. "You're everything I've ever wanted. Smart, talented, beautiful. You should have been mine, Mara. Not my son's." The words had hung in the air between us, impossible to misinterpret, impossible to excuse. "You need to leave. Now. Just listen to me.
No.
This is inappropriate, Gerald. You're married to Patricia. I'm married to your son. This conversation is over. But I love you. Stop. Don't say another word. Go home, sober up, and we're going to pretend this never happened. Even as I'd said it, I'd known we couldn't pretend. Not anymore. Not after this. Gerald had looked at me with something between desperation and anger. You can't tell Wyatt. He wouldn't understand. It would destroy our family. Then you shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have said any of this. Mara, please. I'd stepped back inside and closed the door in his face, locking it immediately. My hands had been shaking so badly, I could barely turn the deadbolt. Through the window, I'd watched him stand there for another minute before stumbling back to his car. He'd driven away, drunk, which was another level of dangerous irresponsibility, leaving me alone in my house with my heart racing and my mind reeling. That was 20 minutes ago. Now I sat in my kitchen with my laptop open, watching the security camera footage on repeat. Everything was there. Gerald's arrival, his slurred confession, my rejection, his plea for secrecy. You should have been mine, not my son's. The words were clear on the audio. Undeniable. Damning. I needed to tell Wyatt. But how? How do you tell your husband that his father just confessed feelings for you? That he'd shown up drunk in the middle of the night, crossed every boundary, made you feel unsafe in your own home? Wyatt loved his father, respected him, admired him, wanted to follow in his footsteps. Gerald was his hero, his mentor, the man who'd taught him everything about business and integrity and being a good person. This would destroy him. But I could not tell him. Gerald had made that impossible. I pulled out my phone and texted Wyatt. Call me when you get this. Important. It was past midnight in Nashville, which meant it was past 1 in Atlanta. Wyatt was probably asleep. He wouldn't see the message until morning. I downloaded the security footage to my laptop, created a backup on a thumb drive, and uploaded a copy to my secure cloud storage. Whatever happened next, I needed documentation. Then I texted my best friend, Kelsey, who was also a music producer and had been my confidant through everything. Are you awake? Need to talk. Emergency. She called immediately. What's wrong? I told her everything. The wedding toast, the uncomfortable moments, tonight's confession. Holy shit, Kelsey said when I finished. Mara, that's sexual harassment. That's stalking. You need to report this. To who? The police? For starters. And you need to tell Wyatt immediately. I know. I texted him. He's in Atlanta, probably asleep. This is serious. Gerald showed up at your house drunk, made unwanted advances, confessed inappropriate feelings. That's predatory behavior. He's Wyatt's father. And that makes it worse, not better. He's using his position in the family to prey on you.
Kelsey was right.
I knew she was right. But the thought of blowing up Wyatt's family, of being the woman who accused her father-in-law of harassment, of potentially destroying Wyatt's relationship with his parents. What if Wyatt doesn't believe me? I asked quietly. You have it on camera. The security footage is proof. What if he believes me but blames me? What if he thinks I encouraged Gerald somehow? Then he's not the man you thought he was. But Mara, you can't protect Gerald to spare Wyatt's feelings. Gerald is dangerous. He showed up drunk at midnight when you were alone. What if he'd forced his way in? What if he'd been violent? The thought made me nauseous. I hadn't let myself consider that possibility. But Kelsey was right. I'd been alone, vulnerable, and Gerald had been drunk and irrational. I'm coming over, Kelsey said. You shouldn't be alone right now. It's late. I don't care. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't answer the door for anyone except me. She hung up before I could argue. I sat in my kitchen, waiting, and looked around at the house Wyatt and I had bought together. We'd painted the walls ourselves, refinished the hardwood floors, planted the garden out back. This was supposed to be our sanctuary, our future. And Gerald had violated it. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I recognized. Gerald's personal cell, not the family line he and Patricia shared. I'm sorry about tonight. The bourbon made me say things I shouldn't have. Please don't tell Wyatt. We can forget this happened. It won't happen again. My hands clenched around the phone. He was already trying to manipulate me, to make me complicit in his secret, to pressure me into silence. I screenshot the text and added it to the folder with the security footage. Then I replied, "You crossed a line tonight that can't be uncrossed. Don't contact me again. Wyatt will be hearing about this." Threads appeared immediately, indicating he was typing. Then they disappeared, then appeared again, then disappeared. Whatever he wanted to say, he was smart enough not to put it in writing. Good. Let him worry. Kelsey arrived 15 minutes later with overnight bag in hand. "I'm staying," she announced, walking in and immediately checking all the locks on the doors and windows. "You're not alone in this house until Wyatt gets back." "Thank you," I said, and started crying for the first time since Gerald had left. Kelsey held me while I ugly cried about the violation, the betrayal, the fear of what came next. "We need a plan," she said when I'd calmed down. "For when you tell Wyatt, for how to handle the family fallout, for keeping you safe." "Safe from what?" "Gerald's not violent. You don't know that. You thought he wasn't inappropriate, and look where we are. Men who feel entitled to women can be dangerous when rejected." She was right. I'd seen enough true crime documentaries, read enough news stories about men who couldn't accept no. "Okay," I said, wiping my eyes. "A plan. What do I do first?" "First, we document everything. Every interaction you can remember with Gerald that felt wrong. Dates, times, witnesses, messages. Everything. You build a timeline." I pulled out my laptop and started writing. The wedding toast. The dances at family events. The text messages. The studio visits. The comments about my appearance. Individually, they'd seemed like small things, easy to dismiss. Together, they formed a pattern of escalating behavior that had culminated in tonight's confession. "Second," Kelsey continued, "you tell Wyatt everything. Show him the footage, show him the texts, show him the timeline. Don't minimize, don't make excuses for Gerald. Just facts. What if he doesn't believe me? Then you have a bigger problem than Gerald. But I don't think that'll happen. Wyatt loves you. He'll be devastated. But he'll believe you. And then what? Then you let Wyatt decide how to handle his father. It's his family, his father. But you make it clear that you're not comfortable being around Gerald anymore, that he's not welcome in your home, that there have to be consequences." I thought about the Dalton family dynamics. Patricia was strong-willed, but devoted to Gerald. She'd stood by him through business struggles, supported his ambitions, built a life around his success. Would she believe that her husband had developed feelings for their daughter-in-law? Or would she dismiss it, protect him, blame me? "What about Patricia?" I asked. "What about her? Does she know? Has she noticed how Gerald acts around me?" Kelsey considered this. "You've mentioned before that she's sometimes cold to you, that she criticizes little things, your outfit choices, your career, your cooking. I thought she just had high standards. Or she's noticed her husband's interest in you and blames you for it." The thought made me sick. If Patricia knew, if she'd seen Gerald's behavior and chosen to blame me instead of confronting him. "We don't know that," Kelsey said, seeing my expression. "She might be completely oblivious. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that she'll take Gerald's side, that she'll try to gaslight you or accuse you of causing this." "How do I prepare for that?" "By having your evidence documented, by having support from people who believe you, and by being willing to cut ties with the entire family if necessary." Cut ties. Leave Wyatt's family behind. Create a division that would force him to choose between his wife and his parents. I'd never wanted this. I'd married Wyatt because I loved him, wanted to build a life with him. His family had been part of the package, a bonus I'd been happy to accept. Now they were a threat I needed to protect myself from. At 3 a.m, my phone rang. "Wyatt," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Mara? I saw your text. What's wrong? Are you okay?" I looked at Kelsey, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm okay, but we need to talk. It's about your father. Dad? Is he alright? Did something happen?" "Something happened, but I need to tell you in person, or at least over video call. Can you FaceTime?" "Yeah, give me a second." The call switched to video. Wyatt appeared on screen, sitting up in his hotel bed, hair messy from sleep, concern written all over his face. "What's going on?" "You're scaring me." I took a deep breath. "Your father came to the house tonight. Around midnight. He was drunk. Wyatt's expression shifted from concern to confusion.
What?
Why would he? Is Mom okay? I don't know. He didn't mention her. Wyatt, he came here to tell me something. Tell you what?
There was no easy way to say it.
No way to soften the blow. He told me I should have been his, not yours. He said he's had feelings for me, that he's been waiting for you to leave town so he could talk to me alone. Silence. Wyatt stared at the screen, his face going through a series of emotions. Disbelief, confusion, dawning horror. That's not. Dad wouldn't. Are you sure you understood him right? He was drunk. Maybe you misheard. I have it on camera, Wyatt. The security footage. Audio and video. He said it clearly. More silence. Send it to me, Wyatt said finally, his voice hollow. Send me the footage. I pulled up the file and sent it to his phone. Watched his face as he watched the video, saw the moment he heard his father's words, saw him play it again, heard the sharp intake of breath when Gerald said, "You should have been mine." When the video ended, Wyatt looked back at the camera. There were tears in his eyes. Mara, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Did he touch you? Did he try anything?
No.
I shut the door. He left. But Wyatt, this isn't the first time he's made me uncomfortable. I told him everything. The wedding toast, the dances, the texts, the studio visits. All the moments I dismissed. All the times I told myself I was overreacting. Wyatt listened, getting quieter and quieter, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. Why didn't you tell me? He asked when I finished. Because I thought I was being paranoid. Because he's your father, and I didn't want to cause problems. Because individually, each thing seemed small enough to ignore. But they weren't small. They were, fuck. Mara, he's been harassing you. For how long? Since the wedding, really. But it's gotten worse lately. Because we've been married longer. Because he thought he had more access to you. Wyatt ran his hands through his hair, looking destroyed.
Jesus Christ.
My own father.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. He took a shaky breath. I'm coming home. I'll catch the first flight out in the morning. We'll deal with this together. What about the Atlanta deal? Fuck the Atlanta deal. My wife is being harassed by my father. Nothing is more important than that. The relief I felt hearing him say that, hearing him believe me without question, choosing me over his father. It was overwhelming. I love you, I said. I love you too. And Mara? He's never getting near you again. I promise you that. We talked for another hour, Wyatt asking questions, me providing details, both of us trying to process the impossible situation we were in. When we finally hung up, Kelsey was making coffee in the kitchen.
He believed you, she said.
It wasn't a question. He believed me.
Good.
That's the first step. Now we prepare for the rest. The rest. Confronting Gerald. Telling Patricia. Dealing with the family fallout. Protecting myself from whatever came next. I'd thought the worst part was Gerald's confession. I was about to learn that was just the beginning. Wyatt caught the first flight out of Atlanta at 6 a.m. and was home by noon. I heard his key in the lock and met him at the door. He dropped his bag and pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I'm so sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. I'm so sorry he did this to you. It's not your fault. He's my father. My responsibility. I should have seen it, should have protected you. You couldn't have known. I should have paid attention. The way he looked at you sometimes, the way he always wanted to be near you. I noticed it, but I told myself I was being paranoid, that he was just being affectionate. I dismissed my own instincts because I didn't want to believe my father could. He pulled back, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. He'd been crying on the plane, I realized, processing the betrayal, the violation, the destruction of everything he'd believed about his family. Show me everything, he said. The texts, the timeline, all of it. I need to see the full picture. Kelsey had left early that morning after making me promise not to be alone with Gerald under any circumstances. Now it was just Wyatt and me, sitting at our kitchen table, going through the evidence I compiled. He watched the security footage 3 times. Read every text Gerald had sent. Looked at the timeline of inappropriate behavior I'd documented. Fucking wedding toast, he muttered. I remember being annoyed that it went so long, but I thought he was just drunk and sentimental. I didn't see him touching you like that. You were with your groomsmen. I should have been watching. I should have noticed. He scrolled through the late-night texts, his jaw clenching tighter with each one. These are from when I was traveling. Every business trip, he texted you. I thought he was just checking in. He was waiting for opportunities. Creating them. Jesus, Mara, some of these trips were his idea. He'd suggest I handle the out-of-town acquisitions, say it was good experience for me, that I needed to learn all aspects of the business. But he was just getting me out of the house, so he could have access to you. The realization made me nauseous. He engineered your business trips? Not all of them, but some. The pattern is there. He'd suddenly have an urgent property deal in another city, insist I handle it personally, tell me it couldn't wait. And while I was gone, he gestured at the texts. Just checking on you. Make sure you're safe. Like he was your husband, not me. Wyatt stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. We're going to my parents' house.
Right now.
We're confronting him together, and my mother needs to know what he's done. Are you sure? Maybe we should wait, plan what we're going to say. There's nothing to plan. He confessed his feelings for my wife, showed up at our house drunk, has been harassing you for 3 years. That's all Mom needs to know. And I want to see his face when he realizes you told me that his secret is out. What if he denies it? Then we show her the security footage. We show her the texts. We show her everything. Wyatt's voice was hard, determined. My father doesn't get to hide behind his reputation anymore. He doesn't get to make you uncomfortable, doesn't get to violate your boundaries, doesn't get to confess his feelings and then pretend it didn't happen. I'd never seen Wyatt like this. Calm but furious, controlled but dangerous. He was usually so even-tempered, so willing to see both sides of a conflict. But this was different. This was his father crossing the ultimate line. Okay, I said. Let's go. We drove to the Dalton estate in Belmead, a sprawling property with a main house that looked like something out of Southern Living magazine. I'd always felt intimidated coming here, aware that I came from a middle-class family, while the Daltons had generational wealth. Now I just felt anger. Wyatt didn't knock. He used his key, walked straight into the house calling, Mom? Dad? We need to talk. Patricia emerged from her sitting room, perfectly put together as always in cashmere and pearls. Wyatt, I thought you were in Atlanta. Is everything all right? Where's Dad? In his office, I think. What's going on? Get him. Family meeting. Now. Something in Wyatt's tone made Patricia's polite smile falter. Wyatt, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Just get Dad. Please. She disappeared down the hall while Wyatt and I stood in the foyer. I could feel my heart racing, my palms sweating. Part of me wanted to run, to avoid this confrontation, to pretend last night hadn't happened. But it had. And Gerald needed to face consequences. Gerald appeared with Patricia, looking confused and slightly nervous. When he saw me, his face went pale. Wyatt, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I didn't know you were back. How is Atlanta? Cut the shit, Dad. You know exactly why I'm here. Patricia looked between us, her confusion deepening. Will someone please tell me what's going on? Wyatt pulled out his phone and pulled up the security footage. This is from last night. Midnight. While I was in Atlanta, on a business trip that you insisted I take. He pressed play. We all watched as drunk Gerald confessed his feelings to me on our front porch. The audio was crystal clear. You should have been mine, not my son's. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's hand went to her throat, her carefully composed expression cracking. Gerald, what is this? I was drunk, Gerald said quickly. I didn't mean it. The bourbon. Don't. Wyatt cut him off. Don't you dare blame the alcohol. You said what you meant. And according to Mara, this has been going on for 3 years. 3 years. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. I found my voice. Since the wedding. Inappropriate touches during dances, comments about my appearance, late-night texts when Wyatt was traveling, showing up at my studio unannounced. It's been a pattern of harassment that I tried to ignore because I thought I was overreacting. But last night made it impossible to ignore. Gerald's face had gone from pale to red. That's not. You're making it sound like I was predatory. I was just being a caring father-in-law, Caring father-in-laws don't tell their daughters-in-law they should have been theirs instead of their sons, Wyatt said, his voice dangerously quiet. Caring father-in-laws don't show up drunk at midnight when their sons are out of town. Caring father-in-laws don't send late-night texts with heart emojis. Don't insult our intelligence by pretending this was innocent. Patricia was staring at Gerald like she'd never seen him before. Is this true? Have you been pursuing Mara? Patricia, you're misunderstanding. Answer the question. Have you had feelings for our son's wife? Gerald's silence was answer enough. Patricia's legs seemed to give out. She sank onto the foyer bench, her perfect composure completely shattered. How could you? Our son's wife. Your daughter-in-law. How could you even? I don't understand. I didn't mean for it to happen, Gerald said, his voice pleading now. She's everything you used to be, Patricia. Creative, passionate, full of life. When Wyatt brought her home, I thought she was perfect for him. But then I got to know her, spend time around her, and I... Stop talking, Patricia said, her voice sharp as glass. Just stop. She looked at me, and I braced myself for anger, for blame, for accusations that I'd somehow encouraged this. Instead, she said, I'm so sorry, Mara. I should have seen it. I did see it, if I'm honest. The way he looked at you, the way he found excuses to be near you. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he was just being affectionate with family. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. Mom. Wyatt started. And I blamed you. Patricia continued, looking at me with tears in her eyes. I blamed you for being young and beautiful and talented. I criticized your clothes because they were too attractive. I criticized your career because it gave Gerald excuses to visit your studio. I criticized your cooking because Gerald always praised it. I made you feel unwelcome in this family because it was easier than confronting my husband about his inappropriate behavior. The admission hung in the air. Patricia had known, or suspected, and instead of protecting me, she'd made me the problem. I'm sorry, she said again. I'm so deeply sorry. Gerald was watching this exchange with growing panic. Patricia, we can work through this. It was just a moment of weakness, a foolish confession. We don't need to blow this out of proportion. Out of proportion? Wyatt's voice rose. You sexually harassed my wife for 3 years, confessed romantic feelings for her, and showed up at our house drunk in the middle of the night. How is that out of proportion? I never touched her inappropriately. You touched her at the wedding, I said, finding strength in Patricia's admission. Your hand on my lower back, your thumb on my skin. You touched me during every dance, at every family event. You put your hand on my shoulder, my waist, always lower than appropriate, always lingering too long. Don't pretend you didn't touch me. Those were just. And showing up at my studio, I continued, my voice getting stronger. Saying you were just in the neighborhood when your office is across town. Commenting on what I was wearing, how I looked, making me feel uncomfortable in my own workspace. That was stalking, Gerald. You were stalking me. I wasn't stalking. What would you call it? Wyatt demanded. Because from where I'm standing, you systematically harassed my wife, used your position as my father to gain access to her, and violated her sense of safety in her own home, her workplace, and our family events. That's not just inappropriate. That's predatory. Gerald looked to Patricia for support, but she was staring at her hands, tears streaming down her face. I think you should leave, Patricia said quietly. What? I think you should leave this house. Now. I need time to think, to process this. I can't look at you right now. Patricia, this is my house. Our house, she corrected, steel entering her voice. And right now, I want you out of it. You can't be serious. Get out. Gerald looked at each of us, seeing no allies, no escape. Fine. But we're going to talk about this like rational adults when everyone's calmed down. There's nothing rational about what you did, Wyatt said. And we're not calming down. You violated my wife. You destroyed my trust. You ruined our family. Those aren't things you fix by calming down. Gerald grabbed his keys and wallet from the hall table and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The three of us stood in the foyer, the silence heavy with everything that had just been said. I don't know what to do, Patricia finally said. I've been married to that man for 35 years. I've built my entire life around him, his success, his reputation. And now you know who he really is, Wyatt said, not unkindly. And you have to decide what you're going to do about it.
Patricia looked at me.
What do you want to happen? You're the one he hurt. You deserve to decide how this plays out. I hadn't expected that. I'd expected her to defend Gerald, to minimize his behavior, to try to sweep it under the rug for the sake of family harmony. I want him to stay away from me, I said. I don't want him in our house, at our events, anywhere near me. I want him to acknowledge what he did, to stop making excuses, to take responsibility for his actions. That's reasonable, Patricia said. I'll make sure he understands those boundaries. And Mara, I meant what I said.
I'm sorry.
For not protecting you, for making you feel like the problem. You deserved better from me. After we left Patricia's house, Wyatt and I drove in silence for a while. You okay? He finally asked. I don't know. That was intense. Mom surprised me. I thought she'd defend him. Maybe she's been waiting for an excuse to confront him. Maybe she's known longer than we think. Wyatt's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I keep thinking about all the business trips. How many of them did he engineer just to get me away from you? How long has he been planning this? I don't think he was planning anything specific. I think he's just been indulging his feelings, pushing boundaries, seeing how far he could go. And last night, he was drunk enough to say what he'd been thinking sober. But Wyatt, if I hadn't had that security camera, if I hadn't documented the pattern, if you hadn't believed me, he would have gotten away with it. I'll always believe you. And he's not getting away with anything. We're going to make sure of that. When we got home, Wyatt called his attorney, a family lawyer named Marcus Chun, who'd handled the purchase of our house. Marcus, I need advice on a harassment situation. My father has been inappropriately pursuing my wife. He explained the situation while I sat next to him, listening to his clinical description of his father's predatory behavior. Marcus was quiet for a moment after Wyatt finished. That's a delicate situation. Legally, you could pursue a restraining order based on the pattern of harassment and the midnight visit. The security footage helps establish his behavior, and the texts create a paper trail. Would it hold up?
Possibly.
Tennessee courts take harassment seriously, especially when there's documentation. But you need to understand that filing for a restraining order will make this public. Your father is a prominent businessman. This will become news. Wyatt looked at me. I nodded. We're willing to go public if necessary, Wyatt said. My priority is protecting my wife. Then I'd recommend we send your father a cease and desist letter first. Formal legal notice that he's to have no contact with Mara, stay away from your home and her workplace, and cease all communication. If he violates it, then we file for the restraining order with the letter as evidence that he was warned. How quickly can you draft that? I can have it ready by tomorrow. I'll need copies of all the evidence, the security footage, the texts, any other documentation of his behavior. We spent the next hour compiling everything and sending it to Marcus. By the time we finished, it was late afternoon, and I was emotionally exhausted. I need to call my parents, I said. They need to know what's happening before they hear about it from someone else. My mother answered on the second ring. Mara, how are you, sweetie? Mom, I need to tell you something. Can you get Dad on the line too? There was a pause. You're scaring me. Is everything okay? Just get Dad, please. A minute later, both my parents were on speakerphone. I told them everything. The harassment, the midnight confession, the confrontation with Gerald and Patricia. My mother gasped and swore, which was unusual for her. My father was ominously silent. When I finished, Dad spoke first. Are you safe? Is Wyatt there with you? I'm safe. Wyatt came home immediately. He's been incredible.
Good.
Because I'm 5 minutes from driving to Gerald Dalton's house and beating the shit out of him. Dad, that man harassed my daughter for 3 years. Showed up at your house drunk, made you feel unsafe. He's lucky I don't know where he is right now. We're handling it legally, Wyatt said. We're getting a cease and desist letter, and if he violates it, we'll pursue a restraining order. You should skip straight to the restraining order, Dad said. Men like that don't respond to pieces of paper. They respond to consequences. We're hoping the legal warning will be enough, I said. But if it's not, we'll escalate. My mother was crying. Mara, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you've been dealing with this alone, that you felt like you couldn't tell us. I didn't want to cause problems. The Daltons they're important in Nashville. I didn't want to create family drama over something I thought might be in my head. You weren't imagining it, Mom said firmly. And their social status doesn't give them the right to make you uncomfortable. I don't care if Gerald Dalton owns half of Nashville. He doesn't get to harass you. We talked for another 30 minutes, my parents asking questions, making sure I was really okay, offering to come stay with us if I needed support. When we hung up, Wyatt pulled me close. Your dad's right, you know. We should go straight for the restraining order. Marcus said the letter first. Marcus is thinking like a lawyer. I'm thinking like a husband. That letter won't stop my father. He's arrogant, entitled, convinced he can talk his way out of anything. A cease and desist letter will just piss him off. What do you think he'll do? Wyatt was quiet for a moment. I think he'll try to apologize. He'll show up here or at your studio, try to explain himself, try to convince you that he's not the bad guy. He'll minimize what he did, blame the alcohol, claim it was just a misunderstanding. And if that doesn't work, then I don't know. I've never seen this side of him before. I don't know what he's capable of. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump, convinced Gerald was outside, that he'd come back, that the confrontation had only made things worse. Wyatt stayed awake with me, checking the security cameras every hour, making sure all the doors and windows were locked. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But I need you to understand that my feelings for you are real. I've tried to fight them, tried to be just a father-in-law, but I can't anymore. You're all I think about. Please don't let Wyatt destroy our family over this. We can work through it if you'll just give me a chance to explain. I showed Wyatt. He immediately called Marcus, waking him up. He's violating the boundary already, Marcus said, his voice groggy. We haven't even sent the letter yet. Save that text, don't respond. This actually helps our case. It shows ongoing harassment and an unwillingness to respect basic boundaries. We want the restraining order, Wyatt said. Forget the cease and desist. File for the restraining order tomorrow. Okay, but you need to understand, this will become public record. People will find out. I don't care. My wife's safety is more important than my father's reputation. Marcus filed the restraining order petition the next morning. Tennessee law required a hearing within 15 days, giving Gerald a chance to contest it. The petition outlined everything: the 3-year pattern of harassment, the inappropriate touching, the late-night texts, the studio visits, the midnight confession, the post-confrontation text. It painted a picture of escalating predatory behavior. We also filed a police report, creating an official record of Gerald's conduct. Detective Sarah Park took my statement, watched the security footage, read the texts. This is clear harassment, she said. And given his persistence even after being confronted, I'm concerned about escalation. Has he made any threats? Not explicit threats, I said. But his last text suggested he's not going to stop. Keep documenting everything. Every text, every call, every time you see him anywhere. If he shows up at your home or workplace, call 911 immediately. The detective's concern was validating but also terrifying. Gerald wasn't just an uncomfortable father-in-law anymore. He was officially a potential threat. The news of the restraining order filing spread through Nashville's social circles within days. Dalton Properties was too prominent, Gerald too well-known, for it to stay quiet. My phone started ringing with calls from family friends, colleagues, people I barely knew, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. I stopped answering calls from anyone I didn't know well. Wyatt's phone was worse. His business contacts, his father's associates, people from the real estate community, all of them reaching out, asking questions, trying to get information. Thomas Henley just called, Wyatt said on day 3 of the media circus. He's one of Dad's oldest business partners. He wanted to know if I was sure about making such serious accusations against my own father. Like I'm the problem here. What did you say? I told him I'm sure about protecting my wife from harassment, and if he has a problem with that, he can fuck off. Despite everything, I smiled. Wyatt had changed since this started. He'd always been kind and supportive, but now there was an edge to him, a willingness to burn bridges to protect me. Patricia called me directly, which surprised me. Mara, I want you to know I support the restraining order, she said. I've filed for legal separation from Gerald. I can't be married to a man who would do what he did. Patricia, you don't have to. Yes, I do. For my own self-respect, and to show you that I take this seriously. Gerald has been staying at our lake house. I've consulted with my own attorney about divorce proceedings.
I'm sorry.
I never wanted to break up your marriage. You didn't break up anything. Gerald did. And honestly, this has opened my eyes to a lot of things I've been ignoring for years. The way he treats women, the comments he makes, the boundaries he crosses. I've been complicit by staying silent. What will you do? I'm moving forward with a divorce. I'm stepping down from some charity boards where Gerald has influence. I'm making it clear that I stand with you, not with him. It's the least I can do. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after the filing. Those 2 weeks felt endless. Gerald hired an expensive attorney who filed a response denying everything, claiming the midnight visit was a misunderstood attempt at a caring conversation, and that I was misinterpreting normal family affection. The response made me furious. Even faced with video evidence, with texts, with a clear pattern, he was still trying to gaslight me. But Marcus was confident. His attorney is doing what defense attorneys do, denying and deflecting. But we have documentation. We have his own words on camera. We have the pattern of behavior. The judge will see through this. The day of the hearing arrived. Wyatt and I dressed formally and drove to the courthouse together. Gerald was there with his attorney, looking polished and professional, every inch the successful businessman defending his reputation. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, not looking at each other. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Judge Martinez, reviewed the evidence before the hearing began. The security footage, the texts, my written statement detailing the 3-year pattern. When the hearing started, Marcus presented our case methodically. The video was played in court. Gerald's confession echoed through the room. You should have been mine, not my son's. His attorney tried to argue it was taken out of context, that Gerald was drunk and emotional, that it didn't constitute harassment. Judge Martinez cut him off. Counselor, I've watched the footage. The defendant clearly states he has feelings for the petitioner and that he's been waiting for her husband to leave town to approach her. That's not out of context. That's predatory behavior. Gerald's attorney changed tactics, trying to paint me as oversensitive, as misunderstanding Gerald's affectionate nature. Marcus presented the texts, the timeline, the pattern of escalating behavior. The judge asked me directly, Ms. Dalton, do you feel unsafe around the respondent? Yes, Your Honor. His behavior has escalated over 3 years, and even after being confronted by both me and my husband, he continued to contact me. I don't trust him to respect boundaries. Has he made any threats? Not explicit threats, but his text after the confrontation suggested he wasn't going to stop pursuing contact with me. He said his feelings were real and asked me to give him a chance to explain. That feels threatening given the context. Judge Martinez looked at Gerald. Mr. Dalton, do you dispute that you went to the petitioner's home at midnight and made the statements captured on video? Gerald's attorney whispered to him before he answered. I was intoxicated and said things I shouldn't have. I apologize for my poor judgment. That's not what I asked. Do you dispute making those statements? No, Your Honor. But I never intended to frighten Ms. Dalton or make her uncomfortable. I was simply trying to confess romantic feelings for your daughter-in-law while your son was out of town and she was alone. The judge finished. Mr. Dalton, I've reviewed the evidence. The pattern of behavior detailed by the petitioner, combined with the video and text evidence, demonstrates a clear case of harassment and unwanted romantic pursuit. The restraining order is granted. Relief flooded through me. The respondent is ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from the petitioner at all times, to have no direct or indirect contact with her, and to stay away from her home and workplace. This order will remain in effect for 1 year, at which time it can be renewed if necessary. Do you understand these terms, Mr. Dalton? Yes, Your Honor, Gerald said, his voice tight. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. This court takes harassment seriously, Mr. Dalton, particularly harassment that uses familial relationships to gain access to victims. We left the courthouse victorious, but drained. It's over, I said to Wyatt as we walked to the car. This part is, he said. But we still have to figure out how to live in a city where my father is a prominent businessman, where people will take sides, where this will follow us. He was right. The restraining order was just the beginning of rebuilding our lives in the aftermath of Gerald's violation. But for the first time since that midnight confession, I felt like I could breathe. The restraining order changed everything and nothing. Gerald was legally required to stay 500 feet away from me, but Nashville felt smaller than ever. I saw him everywhere, or thought I did. Every dark sedan that drove past our house made me tense. Every man in a business suit at the coffee shop made me look twice. The paranoia was exhausting. Wyatt installed additional security cameras around our property, upgraded our alarm system, and insisted I share my location with him at all times through my phone. It felt like overkill until I came home from the studio one day and found footprints in our garden beds, right outside our bedroom window. "He's testing the boundaries," Detective Park said when we reported it. "He wants you to know he's out there, that a piece of paper won't stop him. Can't you arrest him for violating the restraining order? We need proof it was him. Footprints aren't enough. But I'll increase patrols in your neighborhood, and I'm flagging your address in our system. Any call from your house gets immediate priority response." It was something, but it didn't make me feel safe. The Nashville music community had mixed reactions to the restraining order. Some people were supportive, reaching out to offer studio time if I needed to avoid my usual space, or checking in to make sure I was okay. Others were less understanding. I lost a potential client the week after the court hearing. A singer-songwriter I'd been courting for months called to say she'd decided to go in a different direction. When I asked if it had anything to do with the restraining order, there was a long pause. "I just don't want to get involved in family drama," she said. "It's nothing personal." It felt personal. Kelsey was furious when I told her, "That's bullshit. You're the victim of harassment, and people are punishing you for it? Fuck that. Gerald's connected in this city. People do business with Dalton Properties. They don't want to upset him. Then they're cowards." She wasn't wrong, but understanding the social dynamics didn't make it hurt less. 3 weeks after the restraining order was granted, I was working late at the studio when I got a call from Patricia. "Mara, I need to warn you about something. Gerald's been drinking heavily since the separation. He showed up at the house tonight, drunk, demanding to talk to me. When I refused, he said things about you that they were concerning." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "He said you'd ruined his life, that everything was fine until you made a scene about his innocent affection. He said you manipulated Wyatt against him, that you were trying to destroy the Dalton family. He doesn't actually believe that. I think he does. He's rewriting history in his mind, making himself the victim. And Mara, when I told him to leave, he said, she can't hide behind that restraining order forever." It felt like a threat. "Did you call the police?" "I did. They came and documented his visit, warned him about respecting the property boundaries. But Mara, I'm worried about what he might do. He's not thinking clearly, and he's angry." After we hung up, I called Detective Park and relayed Patricia's warning. "We'll add it to his file," she said. "But unless he violates the restraining order directly, comes within 500 feet of you, contacts you, shows up at your home or workplace, our hands are tied. So, I just wait for him to escalate?" "Unfortunately, yes. But stay vigilant. Document anything suspicious. And Mara, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, call 911. Don't second-guess yourself." I told Wyatt about the call that night. He was quiet for a long moment. "My father's unraveling," he said finally. "I've never seen him like this. He's always been so controlled, so composed. Now he's drinking, showing up at Mom's house, blaming everyone but himself. Do you think he'll violate the order? I think he's angry enough and drunk enough to do something stupid. And that scares me." Wyatt wasn't the only one dealing with fallout from Gerald's behavior. His relationship with his mother had become complicated. Patricia was trying to be supportive, but her 35-year marriage was ending because of the restraining order. Some part of her, I suspected, resented me, even if she tried not to show it. One Sunday, she invited us to lunch at her house. Gerald was still at the lake property, and she wanted to spend time with Wyatt. "I miss my son," she'd said when she called. "This whole situation has taken you away from me too." Wyatt went. I stayed home, not wanting to create more awkwardness. When he came back, he looked tired. "How was it?" I asked. "Strange. She's trying so hard to be normal, to pretend everything's fine. But it's not fine. Her whole life is falling apart. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. This isn't your fault. But Mara, she asked me if we'd consider dropping the restraining order. Said it might help Dad come to his senses, give him a chance to apologize properly. I felt cold. What did you say? I said no. That your safety is more important than Dad's feelings. But I could see it hurt her, the choice I was making. Between me and your father. Between what's right and what's comfortable. She knows I made the right choice, but it doesn't make it easier for her. I understood Patricia's position better than I wanted to. She built her entire identity around being Gerald Dalton's wife. Now she was facing divorce at 60, her social standing uncertain, her financial future dependent on lawyers and settlements. But I also couldn't sacrifice my safety for her comfort. The divorce proceedings were messy. Gerald hired an aggressive attorney who tried to paint Patricia as an unsupportive wife who'd abandoned him in his time of need. Patricia's attorney countered with evidence of his harassment, his drinking, his refusal to take responsibility. The restraining order became a central piece of the divorce case. Gerald's attorney argued it showed Patricia was turning the family against him. Patricia's attorney argued it showed he was a danger to family members. Wyatt and I were subpoenaed to give depositions. Sitting in a conference room, answering questions about Gerald's behavior, having his attorney try to twist my words to make me seem vindictive, it was brutal. Isn't it true that you never explicitly told Mr. Dalton Sr. that his attention was unwelcome? Gerald's attorney asked. I shifted away from his touches. I gave short responses to his texts. I made excuses to avoid being alone with him. Those are all clear signals that his attention was unwelcome. But you never said the words stop or I'm uncomfortable, did you? Women are socialized not to make scenes, especially with family members. I was trying to maintain family harmony while protecting myself. So, you admit you prioritize family harmony over clear communication? I admit I tried to handle an uncomfortable situation delicately because the person making me uncomfortable was my husband's father. When delicate didn't work, when he showed up drunk and confessed feelings, I was very clear. I told him to leave and that Wyatt would be informed. There was nothing unclear about that. The attorney moved on, but the exchange left me shaking. Wyatt's deposition was worse. They asked him about his relationship with his father, whether he'd ever seen Gerald be inappropriate with other women, whether he thought I might have misinterpreted Gerald's attention. My wife has never lied to me, Wyatt said, his voice hard. She documented everything, has video evidence, has text messages. There's no misinterpretation. My father harassed her, and when confronted, he admitted it. Those are facts. But you must feel some loyalty to your father. My loyalty is to my wife. My father violated her trust, her boundaries, and her safety. He chose to do that. I'm choosing to protect her from him. That's not disloyalty. That's being a decent husband. 4 months after the restraining order was granted, Gerald violated it. I was leaving a client meeting at a studio in the Gulch when I saw him standing next to my car in the parking garage. Just standing there, waiting, clearly having tracked my location somehow. My first instinct was to run back inside, but he'd already seen me, and I was tired of being afraid. I pulled out my phone, started recording, and approached him while keeping distance. Gerald, you're violating the restraining order. You need to leave. I just want to talk to you, Mara. Please. Just 5 minutes.
No.
You're not allowed within 500 feet of me. I'm calling the police. I dialed 911, keeping the camera on him. This is Mara Dalton. I have a restraining order against Gerald Dalton, and he's currently violating it. I'm at the parking garage at. Gerald moved toward me, and I backed up. Mara, please just listen. Stay back. Do not come closer. I need you to understand, I never meant to hurt you. These feelings, they're real, and you can't just... 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice came through my phone. I'm being approached by someone who has a restraining order against him. Gerald Dalton. He's violating the order right now. Are you in immediate danger? He's moving toward me. I've told him to stay back. Police are on their way. Stay on the line. Can you get to a safe location? I ran back toward the studio entrance. Gerald followed, calling after me. Mara, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk. The studio security guard saw me running and came out. Ma'am, is everything okay? That man has a restraining order against him. Police are on the way. The guard positioned himself between Gerald and me. Sir, you need to leave the property. This is absurd. I'm her father-in-law. We're family. Sir, she says you have a restraining order. That means you need to leave. Police arrived within 5 minutes. Gerald was still there, arguing with the security guard about how he just wanted to talk, how this was all a misunderstanding. The officers arrested him on the spot. I watched them put handcuffs on Gerald Dalton, successful businessman, pillar of the community, my father-in-law, and felt nothing but relief. We need your statement, one officer said. And we'll need that recording. I gave them everything. The video showing Gerald approaching me, following me, refusing to leave. The audio of him admitting he wanted to talk to me despite the restraining order. He'll be held until his arraignment tomorrow, the officer said. The judge will decide on bail and whether to extend the restraining order or issue criminal charges. What are the chances of criminal charges? With this video? Pretty high. He clearly violated a court order and he approached you in a threatening manner. The DA will likely prosecute. I called Wyatt from the studio. Gerald violated the restraining order. He was waiting by my car. Silence. Then, are you okay? Did he hurt you?
Fine.
Security helped. Police arrested him. I'm safe. I'm coming to get you. Don't leave until I get there. While I waited for Wyatt, Marcus Chin called. Detective Park just contacted me. Gerald's arrest is going to make the news. Violation of a restraining order by a prominent businessman. The media will be all over this. I don't care about the media. I care about him being held accountable. Good. Because we're going to push for the maximum penalties. This wasn't an accidental encounter. He tracked your location, waited for you, and approached you despite knowing about the restraining order. That shows premeditation and disregard for court orders. The next day, Gerald's arraignment was packed with reporters. The story had broken overnight. Nashville real estate developer arrested for violating restraining order. The details were vague. The restraining order had been filed by a family member. Violation occurred at a public location. Video evidence existed, but it was enough to cause a scandal. Gerald's attorney tried to argue for low bail, citing his community ties and business responsibilities. The prosecutor countered with my video, with the documented pattern of harassment, with the fact that Gerald had shown up drunk at Patricia's house making threats just weeks earlier. Mr. Dalton has demonstrated a pattern of disregarding boundaries and court orders, the prosecutor said. He is a danger to the protected party and should be held without bail pending trial. The judge set bail at $250,000 and issued a stay-away order that extended the restraining order's distance to 1,000 feet. Mr. Dalton, you violated a court order, the judge said. That's a serious offense. If you make bail, you are not to go anywhere near the protected party. If you violate this order again, you'll be held without bail until trial. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Gerald said, looking nothing like the confident man who'd shown up at my house 4 months ago. He looked old, defeated, humiliated. I should have felt sorry for him. But I didn't. Patricia paid his bail. When I heard, I called her. Why would you do that? After everything he's done? Because he's still the father of my son, she said quietly. And despite everything, I don't want him sitting in jail. But Mara, I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting my own peace of mind. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't give him this chance to make better choices. He's already proven he won't make better choices. I know. But I have to try to believe he will. Otherwise, I've spent 35 years married to a monster, and I can't accept that. I understood, even if I disagreed. Patricia needed to believe Gerald could change because the alternative, that she'd wasted decades on a man who couldn't respect basic boundaries, was too painful. The criminal trial for the restraining order violation was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, Gerald's reputation in Nashville was crumbling. Dalton Properties lost 3 major contracts. Business partners started distancing themselves. Charity boards he'd served on requested his resignation. The court of public opinion was harsher than any legal proceeding. Wyatt's phone rang constantly, reporters wanting comments, business associates asking if it was true, friends trying to get the inside story. He stopped answering calls from anyone outside our immediate circle. My father built that company from nothing, he said one night. Now it's falling apart because he couldn't control himself around his daughter-in-law. It's pathetic. Do you feel bad for him? I feel bad for what he was. For the man I thought he was. But what he actually is.
No.
I don't feel bad for that person at all. The trial was swift. The video evidence was damning. Gerald had clearly violated the restraining order, had approached me despite knowing it was illegal, had followed me when I tried to leave. His attorney tried to argue that Gerald had been parked in a public garage and had coincidentally encountered me, that the conversation had been brief and non-threatening. The prosecutor played my video. Gerald saying, "I need you to understand, and these feelings are real," while following me across a parking garage wasn't coincidental or non-threatening. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty of violating a protective order. The judge sentenced him to 6 months in jail, with the possibility of probation if he completed court-ordered therapy and anger management courses. "Mr. Dalton, you had every opportunity to respect the court's orders," the judge said. "You chose not to. You prioritized your own desires over another person's safety and over the law. That's unacceptable, and it requires consequences." Gerald was led away in handcuffs. Patricia cried quietly in the gallery. Wyatt held my hand and didn't look at his father. After the sentencing, we walked out of the courthouse into a crowd of reporters. "Mrs. Dalton, how do you feel about your father-in-law's conviction? Do you think 6 months is enough? What do you want people to know about this case?" Marcus had prepared a statement, but I stopped him. "I wanted to say this myself. Gerald Dalton used his position as my father-in-law to harass me for 3 years. He made me uncomfortable in my own home, my workplace, and at family events. He confessed romantic feelings for me, showed up at my house drunk, and violated a restraining order. The legal system held him accountable. I hope other people in positions of power understand that family relationships don't entitle you to violate someone's boundaries. Thank you." Short, direct, and final. The story ran in every Nashville outlet. Daughter-in-law speaks out after father-in-law's conviction. The details of Gerald's harassment, the 3-year pattern, the midnight confession, it all became public. Some people were supportive. Others blamed me for speaking out, for destroying a good man's reputation. I learned to ignore the second group. Patricia's divorce was finalized 2 months after Gerald's conviction. She got the Belle Meade house, a substantial settlement, and her freedom. "I'm moving to Savannah," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "My sister lives there, and I need a fresh start. Nashville has too many memories, too many people who know the story." I understand. "Mara, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. For fighting back, for protecting yourself, for not letting him silence you. I should have done the same 35 years ago when I first saw how he treated women. But I didn't, and you paid the price for my cowardice. You're doing the right thing now. That's what matters. Tell Wyatt I love him, and that I'm sorry for the position this put him in. Choosing between his father and his wife shouldn't have been a choice he had to make. He chose right."
He did.
"You raised a good man." She paused. "Well, I suppose I helped raise a good man, despite everything else I got wrong." After Patricia left for Savannah, Wyatt and I were alone with the aftermath. Gerald served 4 months of his 6-month sentence before being released on probation. Part of his probation was a permanent restraining order. He could never contact me, could never come within 1,000 feet of me, for the rest of his life. Dalton Properties was sold to a competitor. Gerald's reputation was too damaged to recover, and no one wanted to do business with a convicted criminal who'd harassed his daughter-in-law. The money from the sale went partly to Patricia's settlement and partly to Gerald's living expenses. He moved to a small apartment in Franklin, worked a low-level construction job, and lived a quiet, anonymous life. Wyatt never spoke to him again. "I don't hate him," Wyatt told me one night, a year after Gerald's conviction. "But I don't know him anymore. The man I thought was my father would never have done what he did. So either he was always this person and I was blind, or he became this person and I missed the change. Either way, he's a stranger to me now. Do you regret how it ended?" "I regret that it had to end this way. But I don't regret protecting you. I'd make the same choices again." My music production career survived the scandal. Some clients left, but others, particularly women who dealt with their own harassment, sought me out specifically because I'd fought back. I started getting requests to speak at industry events about harassment and boundaries. I talked about recognizing the signs of inappropriate behavior, about documenting everything, about the importance of believing victims even when the perpetrator seems respectable. One woman approached me after an event and said, "My boss has been making me uncomfortable for months. Your story gave me the courage to report him." Thank you. That made everything worth it. 3 years after Gerald's midnight confession, Wyatt and I were stronger than ever. We'd weathered the worst kind of family crisis and come out intact. We sold the East Nashville house, too many bad memories, and bought a place in Germantown. New neighborhood, new beginning, same commitment to each other. On our 5th wedding anniversary, Wyatt surprised me with a vow renewal ceremony. Just us, our closest friends, and Patricia via video call from Savannah. 5 years ago, "I promised to love you, honor you, and protect you," Wyatt said. I didn't know how tested those promises would be. But Mara, every day I choose you. Every day I protect you. Every day I love you more than the day before. That's not changing. I cried through my own vows. You believed me when it would have been easier to doubt. You chose me when it cost you your family. You protected me when I needed it most. Wyatt, you showed me what a real partner looks like. Thank you for being the man you are. We renewed our vows and celebrated the life we'd built despite, and because of everything we'd survived. Gerald was still out there somewhere, living his diminished life. But he was no longer our problem, no longer my fear, no longer a threat. The restraining order was permanent. The scandal was old news. The social fallout had settled, and I was free. 5 years after Gerald's conviction, I stood on a stage at the Nashville Women in Music Summit, looking out at an audience of 500 women, and told my story one more time. Not the sanitized version. Not the brief summary. The whole truth, the 3 years of escalating harassment, the midnight confession, the legal battle, the restraining order violation, the conviction. And most importantly, what came after. The thing about being harassed by a family member, I said to the quiet room, is that people expect you to protect the family more than yourself. They expect you to minimize what happened, to forgive quickly, to prioritize family harmony over your own safety. But here's what I learned. You don't owe your harasser your silence. You don't owe their family your compliance. You owe yourself protection, boundaries, and the freedom to live without fear. The audience erupted in applause. After my speech, a line of women waited to talk to me, each one sharing their own story of family harassment, workplace violations, boundaries ignored. My uncle makes inappropriate comments at every holiday, one woman said. Everyone tells me to just ignore him, that he doesn't mean anything by it. But your story made me realize I don't have to tolerate it. My boss touches my shoulder when he talks to me, another said. It makes my skin crawl, but he's friends with my father-in-law. I've been afraid to report it. Hearing what you went through, knowing you survived and thrived, it gives me courage. This was my life now. Music production was still my main career, but advocacy had become my calling. I spoke at conferences, led workshops on recognizing harassment, consulted with companies on creating safer workplace policies. The woman who'd been terrified in a parking garage 5 years ago had become someone who helped other women find their voices. Wyatt was in the audience today, sitting in the front row like he did at every speaking engagement. When our eyes met, he smiled, the same proud, loving smile he'd given me the first time I'd spoken publicly about what Gerald had done. You are incredible, he said when I came off stage. Every time you tell that story, you help someone. I hope so. That's why I keep doing it. We'd come so far from those terrifying days after the midnight confession. Our marriage was stronger than I'd ever imagined possible. We'd been tested by fire and come out not just intact, but better. Part of that was therapy. We'd both gone individually and together, processing the trauma, the family betrayal, the ongoing stress of the legal battles. Our therapist had helped us understand that what we'd survived would have destroyed many marriages, but we'd used it to deepen our commitment to each other. You chose each other every day, she'd said during one session, in the hardest circumstances imaginable. That's the foundation of a marriage that lasts. The other part was building a life that was entirely ours, separate from the Dalton family legacy. Wyatt had left real estate after Gerald's conviction. Too many associations, too many people who knew the story, too many reminders of his father. He'd gone back to school for an MBA and then started his own business. A sustainable development consulting firm that helped cities plan eco-friendly housing projects. It was the opposite of his father's luxury developments, focused on community impact rather than profit margins. "I'm building something I'm proud of," he told me when he made the decision. "Something that has nothing to do with the Dalton name or my father's legacy." His company was thriving. 3 years in, he had contracts in 4 states and a reputation for ethical, environmentally conscious work. We'd also moved again, this time to a custom-built house in the nation's neighborhood. We designed it ourselves. Every room, every detail, every choice ours and ours alone. It felt like a physical manifestation of our independence from Gerald's influence. And 6 months ago, we'd welcomed our daughter, Grace Patricia Dalton, named for the grace that had carried us through the worst, and for Wyatt's mother, who'd ultimately done the right thing despite the cost. Holding Grace for the first time, I'd cried thinking about how close I'd come to letting Gerald's harassment drive me away from this life, this marriage, this future. "She's perfect," Wyatt had whispered, tears streaming down his face. Just like her mother, Patricia had flown in from Savannah to meet her granddaughter. She'd been emotional, holding Grace with trembling hands. "Thank you for letting me be part of her life," she'd said. "After everything, you could have cut me out completely. You stood by us when it mattered," I told her. "You chose to do the right thing, even though it cost you your marriage and your life in Nashville." Grace deserves to know her grandmother. Patricia visited regularly now every few months. She'd built a good life in Savannah. New friends, volunteer work with the domestic violence shelter, a small apartment near her sister. She seemed lighter, happier than she'd ever been as Mrs. Gerald Dalton. "I'm grateful for the divorce," she'd confessed during her last visit. "It freed me from a role I'd been playing for so long. I was Gerald Dalton's wife, the perfect society woman, the dutiful spouse. Now I'm just Patricia, and I like her better." We never discussed Gerald directly, but I knew from Wyatt that he was still in Franklin, still working construction, still living his diminished life. The permanent restraining order meant he could never contact me, never see Grace, never have access to Wyatt's life. He'd made his choices, and these were the consequences. The Nashville music community had eventually come around. After the initial scandal died down, people started to see the bigger picture. A woman who'd been harassed by a powerful man, who'd fought back legally, who'd won. The clients I'd lost were replaced by new ones who specifically sought me out because they valued my integrity. Several major labels started sending me projects, and I'd produced 3 Grammy-nominated albums in the past 4 years. "You're kind of famous," Kelsey had joked recently. "Not just for the Gerald situation, but for being genuinely good at your job. I'd rather be known for my work than my father-in-law's conviction." You're known for both. And honestly, the conviction adds to your credibility. You're not just talking about standing up to harassment. You actually did it. One of my proudest achievements was a mentorship program I'd started with Kelsey. We took on young women producers, taught them the technical skills and the business side, but also how to recognize harassment, set boundaries, and protect themselves in an industry that could be predatory. "I wish someone had taught me this stuff when I was starting out," one of our men's had said. "I've dealt with so many uncomfortable situations that I didn't know how to handle." "That's exactly why we're doing this," I told her. "So, the next generation doesn't have to figure it out alone." The program had expanded from 5 months to 20. We were making a difference, one young producer at a time. On Grace's first birthday, we threw a party at our house. Friends, family, colleagues, all the people who'd supported us through the worst and celebrated with us now. Patricia was there with her sister Margaret. Kelsey and her new fiancé brought an enormous stuffed giraffe. Marcus Chun and his wife came with their twin daughters who immediately claimed Grace as their new best friend. Even Detective Park stopped by, off-duty, to deliver a gift and tell us how proud she was of how far we'd come. "You went from a terrified victim to a force for change," she said. "That's remarkable." As the party wound down and Grace fell asleep in my arms, Wyatt pulled me close. Look at what we built, he said, gesturing around our home, filled with people we loved, celebrating a daughter we'd created together. Gerald tried to destroy us. Instead, we built this. We did, didn't we? I keep thinking about that night. The midnight confession. How terrified you must have been, how violated. And now look where we are. You believed me. That made all the difference. Of course I believed you. You're my wife. And even if you weren't, even if we'd just met, I would have believed you. Because women don't make this stuff up. Because video evidence doesn't lie. Because men like my father count on people not believing, not acting, not caring enough to intervene. I'm glad you cared enough. I'll always care enough. You and Grace, you're my whole world. Everything else is just background noise. 2 years after Grace was born, I published a book, Boundaries. A guide to recognizing and responding to harassment was part memoir, part self-help, part legal guide. I told my story in detail, but I also provided practical advice for anyone dealing with harassment, how to document evidence, how to find legal help, how to maintain your safety while pursuing justice. The book became a bestseller. NPR interviewed me. Good Morning America had me on to discuss family harassment and why it's often the hardest kind to report. People think family should protect you, I told the host. But sometimes family is where the danger comes from. And when that happens, you have to be willing to protect yourself, even if it means breaking the family apart. The interviewer, a woman in her 50s, nodded. I think that's the hardest part for people to accept, that you might have to choose between family harmony and your own safety. It shouldn't be hard. Your safety should always win. But we're conditioned to prioritize family, to keep secrets, to not make waves. It takes real courage to break that conditioning. What would you say to someone who's currently being harassed by a family member? I'd say, document everything. Tell someone you trust. Seek legal advice. Don't minimize what's happening to you. And remember, you're not responsible for keeping the family together. The person doing the harassing is responsible for breaking it. After the interview aired, I received thousands of messages. Women sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking out, asking for advice on their own situations. I couldn't respond to all of them personally, but I partnered with a nonprofit that specialized in family harassment cases and helped create a resource guide that was distributed free to anyone who needed it. You're changing lives, Wyatt said, reading through some of the messages with me. One conversation at a time, one book reader at a time, one woman who decides to report her harasser because you showed her it was possible. I just wish Gerald hadn't had to harass me for this to become my calling. I know. But since it happened, you're making sure it means something. That it helps other people. 3 years after the book was published, I was invited to testify before a Tennessee legislative committee about strengthening harassment laws, particularly around family member harassment and restraining order violations. I told the committee about Gerald's behavior, about the 3 years it took me to recognize the pattern, about how the legal system had ultimately protected me, but only after I'd endured significant trauma. We need better education about what constitutes harassment, I said. We need stronger penalties for restraining order violations. We need to make it easier for victims to get protective orders in the first place. And we need to specifically address the unique challenges of family harassment, where social pressure and financial entanglements make it harder for victims to come forward. The committee passed several measures based on my testimony, including mandatory harassment training for all judges handling protective order cases. Increased penalties for restraining order violations. Gerald's 6 months became the minimum, not the maximum. Resources for victims of family harassment, including legal aid and counseling. Public awareness campaigns about recognizing harassment from family members. You just changed the law, Wyatt said when I called him from the Capitol building. You literally just made Tennessee safer for harassment victims. It's not enough, but it's something. It's everything. Because of you, future victims will have more protection, more resources, more support. That's your legacy, Mara. On our 10th wedding anniversary, Wyatt and I went back to the spot where we'd first met, the Songwriters Showcase in East Nashville, now in a different venue but still running monthly. 10 years ago, I saw you across this room and thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, Wyatt said. I had no idea what loving you would require of me. The choices I'd have to make, the family I'd have to walk away from, the life we'd have to rebuild. Do you regret it? Not for a second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. And Grace is the second best thing. Everything else, the scandal, the trial, losing my father, starting over, all of it was worth it to have this life with you. Even though loving me cost you your family, you are my family. You and Grace. My mother too, now that she's found herself again. But the Dalton legacy, my father's approval, all of that, I don't miss it. I never realized how much I was performing for his approval until I stopped. Now I'm just myself, and I like this version better. I like this version too. Good. Because you're stuck with him for the next 50 years. We danced to the same song that had been playing the night we met, surrounded by new artists chasing their dreams just like we'd been chasing ours a decade ago. Except now our dreams had changed, expanded, become bigger than we'd imagined possible. Grace started kindergarten the year after our 10th anniversary. On her first day, Wyatt and I walked her to class together, both of us emotional. She's growing up so fast, I said. Just like you warned me she would. But I didn't believe you until now. Grace was a happy, confident little girl with Wyatt's eyes and my determination. She loved music, of course. Grew up in studios, fell asleep to the sound of me producing tracks, learned to keep rhythm before she could write her name. But she also loved building things, designing things, creating. Wyatt's influence, clearly. When I grow up, I'm going to build houses like Daddy, she announced one day. But pretty ones. With music in every room. Sounds perfect, I told her. You can be anything you want to be. Can I be a boundary setter like you? I laughed, surprised. Where did you hear that term? Patricia said it. She said you're the best boundary setter she knows. What does it mean? I knelt down to Grace's level. It means I know what I will and won't accept from people. It means I protect myself and the people I love. It means I don't let anyone make me feel unsafe or uncomfortable, even if they're family. Like Gerald. We told Grace about Gerald in age-appropriate terms. She knew she had a grandfather she'd never meet, knew he'd done something that hurt people, and had to face consequences. Yes, like Gerald. He didn't respect boundaries, so he's not part of our family anymore. Good. I don't want to meet him anyway. Patricia is enough grandparent. Out of the mouths of babes. 12 years after the midnight confession, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Gerald. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Besides, the permanent restraining order meant he was supposed to have no contact with me. This letter was a violation, which meant I could report it. But first, I wanted to know what he'd say. The letter was surprisingly brief. Mara, I know I'm not supposed to contact you. I know this letter violates the restraining order, and you could have me arrested again. I'm willing to take that risk because there are things I need to say while I still can.
I'm dying.
Lung cancer, stage 4. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I don't expect it. I'm writing because I need you to know that I understand now what I did to you. The harassment, the violation, the way I used my position in the family to make you uncomfortable. It was all real, it was all wrong, and it was my fault. For years, I told myself I was the victim, that you'd overreacted, that Wyatt had chosen wrong, that the legal system had been too harsh. I blamed everyone but myself. But 12 years in this diminished life, alone, cut off from my son, working jobs I'm overqualified for, watching from a distance as you and Wyatt built something beautiful, it's given me time to think. To really think, without the pride and anger clouding my judgment. I was wrong. About everything. You didn't overreact. You protected yourself from someone who was supposed to protect you. Wyatt didn't choose wrong. He chose his wife over his father's feelings, which is exactly what he should have done. The legal system wasn't too harsh. It held me accountable for my actions. I destroyed my family.
Not you. Me.
I know this letter changes nothing. You'll still hate me, still fear me, still see me as the predator I became. You have every right to feel that way. But I needed you to know before I die, while I can still write, that you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry. Not because I want forgiveness, but because you deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved a father-in-law who respected you, protected you, welcomed you into the family with love and boundaries. Instead, you got me. I hope your life is everything you wanted it to be. From what little I've seen, the book, the speaking engagements, the legislative testimony, you're making a real difference in the world. You're helping people. You're using what I did to you to prevent it from happening to others. That's more grace than I deserve. Tell Wyatt I'm proud of the man he's become. Tell him he made the right choice. Gerald. I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden anger, for some sign that this was another attempt to violate my boundaries. But I didn't find it. What I found was something I'd never expected from Gerald: accountability. I showed the letter to Wyatt that evening. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he folded it carefully and handed it back to me. What do you think? I asked. I think he's dying and finally facing what he did. I think 12 years of consequences taught him what 3 years of therapy never could. I think it's too little, too late. But I also think people can change. Even people who've done terrible things can eventually understand the harm they caused. It doesn't undo the harm. It doesn't earn forgiveness. But it's something. Do you want to see him? Before he dies. Wyatt considered this.
No.
I don't. He's had 12 years to reach out, to apologize, to try to make amends. He waited until he was dying to write a letter taking accountability. That's not enough to rebuild a relationship. But you're not angry about the letter?
I guess.
Sad that it took terminal cancer for him to be honest. Sad that this is how it ends, with a letter instead of a conversation, with distance instead of reconciliation. But Mara, even if he'd written this letter 12 years ago, even if he'd taken accountability immediately, I don't think I could have forgiven him. What he did to you, that's not forgivable. What should I do with it? That's up to you. It's your letter. Your violation, your decision. I decided not to report the letter. Gerald was dying. Making him face criminal charges for one final boundary violation seemed pointless. But I also didn't respond. He'd said his piece. That would have to be enough. 6 months later, I received a call from a hospice nurse in Franklin. Gerald had listed me as an emergency contact, along with Wyatt and Patricia. Mr. Dalton passed away this morning, she said. He wanted you to know that he died peacefully and that his final words were an apology. An apology to whom? To everyone he'd hurt, he said, but especially to you and his son. I thanked her for calling and hung up. Gerald Dalton was dead. The man who'd harassed me, violated me, made me fear for my safety, gone. The man who'd been my father-in-law, who'd smiled at my wedding, who'd hidden his obsession behind family affection, gone. I felt relief, and a strange kind of sadness for the waste of it all. Wyatt chose not to attend the funeral. Patricia went, along with a handful of Gerald's former colleagues. It was small, quiet, nothing like the grand affair Gerald probably would have wanted in his prime. How do you feel? Patricia asked me when she called after the service. Free, I said honestly. Like the last thread connecting me to that nightmare has been cut. I feel that way too. Like I can finally close that chapter completely. Are you okay? I am. It's strange. I was married to him for 35 years, and I cried more at the divorce than I did at his funeral. I think I mourned the loss of who I thought he was a long time ago. The man who died today was a stranger. 3 months after Gerald's death, Wyatt and I took Grace to visit Patricia in Savannah. It was Grace's first time meeting her grandmother's new life, the small apartment, the volunteer work, the friends Patricia had made. Your grandmother is happy here, I told Grace as we walked through Savannah's historic district. She seems different than in pictures, Grace observed. Lighter. At 7 years old, my daughter had already learned to read people, to notice emotional weight. She is lighter. She left behind a life that wasn't serving her and built a new one. That takes courage. Like you did when you stood up to Gerald? Exactly like that. Sometimes courage looks like fighting back. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like starting over. I want to be that kind of courageous when I grow up. You already are, baby. You already are. On our last night in Savannah, Patricia pulled me aside while Wyatt put Grace to bed. I need to thank you, she said, for not shutting me out of your lives, for letting me be Grace's grandmother, for understanding that I was a victim of Gerald's behavior too, even though I handled it badly. You stood by us when it mattered. You left your marriage, your home, your entire life to do the right thing. That meant everything. I should have done it sooner. 35 years sooner. Maybe. But you did it when you were ready. That's what counts. Grace is lucky to have you as a mother. You're teaching her to be strong, to set boundaries, to protect herself. Those are lessons I never learned until it was almost too late. It's never too late to learn. Look at you now, volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, helping other women escape abusive situations. You're using your experience to help people just like I am. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law who survived Gerald Dalton and lived to tell the tale. And thrived. Don't forget thrived. 15 years after the Midnight Confession, I received the Nashville Woman of the Year award. The citation read, for her courage in confronting family harassment, her advocacy for victims of abuse, her legislative work strengthening protective laws, and her ongoing commitment to creating safer spaces for women in the music industry. Wyatt, Grace, Patricia, and Kelsey were all in the audience when I accepted the award. 15 years ago, I was a woman being harassed by her father-in-law, I said in my acceptance speech. I was scared, confused, and trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Today, I'm a woman who fought back, won, and built a life dedicated to making sure other women don't have to fight alone. That transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened through documentation, legal action, therapy, support from people who believed me, and the unwavering love of a husband who chose me over his family legacy. If you're being harassed by someone in your family, please know you're not overreacting. Your discomfort is valid. Your boundaries matter. And there are people who will believe you and help you fight back. Thank you. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, Grace, now 10 years old, hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Mom. You turned something bad into something good. That's all we can do, baby. Take the hard things and use them to help other people. When I grow up, I'm going to do that too. I know you will. You're already so brave, so strong. Just like your dad. Wyatt overheard and smiled. She's like her mother. Fierce and fearless. She's like both of us. The best parts of both of us. That night, back at our house in the Nations, Wyatt and I sat on our back deck, while Grace slept inside. 15 years, he said. Seems impossible that it's been that long since that midnight when everything changed. Do you ever think about what our lives would have been like if Gerald had never shown up that night? If he'd kept his feelings hidden, maintained the facade? Sometimes. But I don't think he could have. The harassment was escalating. Eventually, something would have forced it into the open. But maybe we would have had more time. More years of family gatherings, more normalcy, more of you being uncomfortable and me being oblivious? No, thank you. I'm glad it came out when it did, as terrible as it was. Because it forced us to confront the truth, to build boundaries, to create this life we have now. A life built on the ashes of your family legacy. A life built on our terms. On love, respect, partnership, and mutual protection. The Dalton legacy was never mine anyway, it was his. What we've built. This is ours. And I like ours better. I leaned into him, grateful as always for this man who'd chosen me, protected me, stood by me through the worst, and celebrated with me through the best. I love you, I said. I love you too. Every day, for the rest of our lives, I choose you. And I choose you. And our daughter. And this life we've built. To 15 more years, Wyatt said, raising an imaginary glass. To 50 more years, I countered. We sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the yard where Grace played, the house we designed, the neighborhood we'd chosen, everything a testament to our survival, our strength, our refusal to let Gerald's harassment define our future. Gerald was gone. The harassment was over. The legal battles were history. The fear was just a memory. What remained was us. Stronger, wiser, more committed to each other than ever. And that, I thought as Wyatt pulled me close, was the ultimate victory. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, comment with where you're watching from, and subscribe with notifications on. If you're being harassed by a family member, know this. Your boundaries matter. Your safety matters. You don't owe anyone your silence or your compliance. Document everything, seek help, and remember that choosing yourself over family harmony isn't selfish, it's survival. The legal system can protect you. People will believe you. And life after harassment, life after fighting back, life after winning, it's more beautiful than you can imagine. You deserve that beauty. Fight for it.